why the weather's so lousy. It never fails. Well, I shouldn't say never fails. I've only been here 40 years. It's never fails. When we have spring break.
Hold that closer, Rick.
Move your mic up.
Can't hear what I'm saying?
No.
So, see if I can make this a little bit closer.
There you go. Hold it close.
All right. As soon as the major week of spring break hits, we used to expect two things: lousy weather and poor behavior. You know, they both kind of mitigated. The spring break in the past could be a real nightmare. I recall the second year that I was here in town, the town revolted against spring break shenanigans. We had people coming here in the thousands, crowding the beach. They rarely stayed in hotels at that time. They never spent a penny in a restaurant. But they'd cook out on the beach and they'd run out of wood in a hurry, and so they'd tear down your stairs. Oh yeah, now if you live on the second floor, you know all those houses are up on stilts. They tear down the stairs. Some of them are smart enough to go up on top and tear them down from the top down. Others could only tear them up as high as they could reach. They were the ones who were drinking a lot, I guess. And so the town got together and we had a town meeting and said, this has got to stop. And it did eventually. It took a long time. Finally, you know, spring break has now become almost a non-event, particularly these last couple of days. And another thing that's quite rare during spring break is to have winter Texans here. I mean, usually y'all are gone by now. You know, so we were taking a big risk when we announced that we would have this last lecture actually kind of knocking on the door of spring break. Thanks very much to Marion Fursing for the piano work.
I wanted to sing this song for you. Down the street, because we're talking about boats, right?
Tonight, I want to tell you about a type of boat that's been nearly forgotten. It was extremely important in the history of Texas. These are Texas boats. These are Texas Gulf Coast Scow schooners. Here's a nice artistic representation of them. The artist took some liberty with the colors, but you know, that's pretty much the way it is. Did oh, I see, she's going back to do the, we have a very small technical crew, so as soon as she gets the lights, and she'll come up here and do the projector. So until then, I'll keep talking. The Gulf Coast Scow schooner is an invention of Texas. These things were easily built, they were developed here, and they served us well until steam and diesel took over the seas. So these unique little boats were ideally suited to Texas. From our existing conditions and our needs, they were very seaworthy enough that they could handle the often difficult conditions in the Gulf. And if you've been here very long, you know what I'm talking about. The Gulf can get very, very rough. Locally, it is said, never go in the Gulf if there's an N anywhere in the forecast, because north winds are nasty here. They were very shallow draft, so they could negotiate a really treacherous shifting passes, and almost none of the passes in Texas had been jettied. And so these little boats could run in and out of very tiny ports and the shallow bays that were common in most of Texas. There's a boat that we needed. They were very fast. They carried big loads for their size, and they were cheap to build with available local materials. Now, how can you beat what it did? They could be sailed and operated with a tiny crew, very small crew. For instance, a 60-foot boat could required only 3 men. But they served us very, very well from the 1870s until pretty early in the 20th century. Toward the last of their reign, They were turned often into towing vessels that knock the masts off of them, get rid of the sails, and turn them into barges. And they lived a second life that way. And since then, they've been virtually forgotten. Just almost totally forgotten. Only one that I know of has ever even been found and excavated. And it came to a really unfortunate end. Now here's a Scow schooner that was built in Port Lavaca. We are inventing the story here. There's no story that came with the picture. Look at all those people. Man, they're in their Sunday finest. This boat is brand new. I think this is the launching party. Now all these folks on board, all dressed up well, particularly look at those two ladies in their long dresses sitting on benches on the left port side of the boat. They're liable to get a surprise if there's any breeze. And they've got that nice brand new American flag up top. They're towing the little dinghy behind so that if they end up wanting to go to shore, they can do that. And in the background, there's another one, the sister ship. They were here. And Lavaca was one of the common places where they were built. Here's one hard at work. This is our jetties being built here in Port Aransas. This is early 1900s, late 1800s. And this Scow schooner has just carried a deck cargo of logs. Now, again, I'm guessing, what were they using those logs for? Probably to build the railroad trestles that carried the railroad cars out to dump the rocks, to fill up the ocean, to build our jetty. So here's this little Scow schooner hard at work. You can tell they must have been, these were not yachts. Next. Now, this one blows me away. We found this one just a few weeks ago. Look carefully at that picture. On the left is an area from Tarpon, Texas, which we were before we became Port Aransas. It was a well-known excursion boat here. Lashed onto it, or at least tied to it, is a ferry, an early ferry. Look at the cars on it. My goodness. Of course, it's raining. Must be spring. And then look on the right side, there's a Scow schooner. Now, what in the world is it doing in this picture? Look at the deck cargo. Isn't that a car? Wow. So, don't you wish, we can make this story up. It's a lot more fun. But this thing was a hard-working vessel. I wonder if between the Marriott and that Scow, they were going to tow that flat barge over to Port Aransas with the cars on it. Anybody want to guess how old those cars are? Any old car people in the crowd? Yes? No? When? No guessers, okay. Early 1900s. All right, man. We have a story here that really curly. One of these Gulf Coast Scow schooners was serving the trade here. It was built in 1881 in Port Lavaca, of course. And it was delivering a load of lumber, a very big load of lumber, from Calcasieu, Louisiana, down to Port Isabel. Quite a run. Obviously, they were going coastwise. And this was in November of 1903. They were struck by a norther. This was a 56-ton, 60-foot Scow schooner that was 20 feet wide. It was overtaken by a norther, and it seems like it was just south of the Brazos River. If you know the coast, it's pretty far up near Houston, and there's not much of a chance between there and here of getting into shelter. You can go in at Pascavallo if everything is just right, but your chances are pretty strong that you were going to go aground. So this skipper decided that first what he would do is he shortened sail and he continued south until the storm got just too intense. And they hove to, and then they anchored in the Gulf. Let's get pretty desperate to weather the worst of the blow. Their anchor cable parted under the strain. Imagine that. And they were forced to run south to Aransas Pass. And they kept their wits about it. And this is a bad storm going on. They've hove to, and now they've dropped an anchor. Now the cable parts, and their big anchor is gone. So they turn and they run with it under heavily reefed. Now, they tried to make it into Aransas Pass. They got here, and they turned into the pass. And the time, our jetties were not quite finished. And the pass had an old jetty sticking out in the middle of everything, and it shoaled badly. Shoals can build up and dissipate within a couple of hours, literally. The pass was treacherous. Well, these guys turned in as a big norther. They're dead tired at this point, and they almost make it through when the wind veers. Now, veer means that it shifted clockwise. So apparently it went around east and caught them back, and they were stuck. And before they could retrim the sails, they drifted up onto a shoal, onto a sandbar. And now the waves began to beat them to death. Pick them up and slam them down, pick them up and slam them down. And they've got 44,000 board feet of 1 by 12 pine lumber on the deck. Must have been a little bit unwieldy. The guys that at that time were called the life-saving service that we now call the Coast Guard came out to rescue them. This means they came out in a rowboat. They went aboard this plunging, crazy vessel in this awful city, and they lightered it. They cast off all of the cargo. They cut it loose, threw it into the sea. It would drift up on shore later and be claimed because nothing is wasted off the beach in Port Aransas. But it lightened the boat enough that they could refloat it. And now they decided they'd run again, go back out to sea slightly, and make another run at this treacherous pass because now they figured they knew the way in, but they couldn't make it. The boat was leaking so badly from the pounding that all they could do is turn and run down the coast. And about 200 yards, maybe 3, south of the pass, they beached the boat. Now, this is a 60-foot boat, 20 feet wide, and they just moved it on the beach because it was a Scow. It was a schooner. It was very, very shallow. And all 3 of the men who were crewmen aboard stepped off unharmed. Now, luckily, the cargo was insured, but the boat was not. So the decision was made just to leave it. Now, once it was grounded, I can guarantee you that everybody here on the island went by to see what exactly they might need off that wreck. It became briefly the hardware store of the ocean. And those 2 big masts, 18 inches in diameter and 40 feet tall, wow, what a find that must have been. And all those wonderful planks that floated up on the beach, that indeed were finally used. Next one. This wreck blessed the island. And someone here on the island named Rupert Pratt, picked the beach and got enough pine to build his own house right here in Port Aransas. And it's still here. It's been moved, but it's down on the road heading just past the community park on the way to the dump. We used to call it the dump road, but now we've cleaned up our act and it's the community park road. It's just about one of the oldest houses in town. And if we could talk the new owner into peeling off some of that siding, we could see that old 1 by 12 lumber. And we think that it also was used in the construction of the Pratt taxidermy shop, which is about 2 blocks away from here. Also a very, very old building. Now, the Lake Austin, I said, was carrying a big deck load. Let me tell you how big. 44,767 board feet of pine, which would be 2,238 1 by 12 boards, 20 feet long. Count them, folks. They're all stacked on deck. It must have been a bit unwieldy. Let's talk about this a minute, too. You know, this is Monday morning quarterbacking. Add to this, the captain of the vessel had only sailed here for a few months. He was a new hire. Lake Austin had gone through, in fact, almost 6 captains in just 1 year. It was getting old. It was 25, 30 years old, and the original owner had sold it to a group in Port Isabel. And they went through captains like crazy. It must have been hard to work for. And so this old hard-worked boat, nearly a quarter-century old, you put all this together, and you might expect some trouble. Add that to a fierce Texas norther, and you get the picture. And she was forgotten. The Lake Austin was totally forgotten. No one knew anything about it anymore. The captain of the boat went on to drive another boat. Both crewmen got other jobs. The cargo was paid for, and everybody went down the road. Now, in 1966, the boat came back to visit Port Aransas. We had one of those very high spring tides. That's another thing that happens in spring break. Sometimes the tides come up all the way to the dunes. Oh, those poor people. And so, this tide opened up the beach, washed the sand off of the Lake Austin. And we began to see this again after all these years. Now, next time. Lots and lots of press as we begin to dig this boat up. The story of the digging is quite simple. But lots and lots of press, which brings up a point. Sometimes you can't trust the newspapers. I hear some giggles. Sometimes they get things wrong, but sometimes they get them right. So if you balance all these out and then read the other historical records, you can get a pretty good view of this on the boat. And what we did discover, it's in the next one, let's go into the big one, is that the county crew thought they had found a gold treasure ship. They thought it was a Spanish galleon and that it would be loaded with silver and gold. And the county commissioner's court undertook to dig it up. This is recreational crew that worked here on the beach. Now you can see they use real gentle methods. The kind of thing that you would expect in an archaeological dig, right? But you know, at the time there were no laws governing what you did with archaeological ship finds in Texas. It was free game. We didn't have any laws about it. No rules at all. So they set forth on it. And finally, were able to float it. Look at that thing. That's been under the sand since 1903, and this is 1966. Wow. It's floating, folks. It only took one small pump to keep it afloat. Now, I've owned boats that took more pumps than that. So this thing really wasn't too bad, having been buried for all those years. And you can see that the gentle methods they used were pretty hard on the structure. They ripped a lot of the deck off, but it has a very interesting structure. Let's get into it. There were calls to preserve the schooner. Here it is. This is a real windfall, and now the historical people and the treasure people hit nose to nose. The treasure folks said, there's nothing here. There's nothing here, no, it's nothing but a barge. And the historical people said, no, this is the only known example of a Texas boat type. There aren't any others. This is part of our history. We have to save it. And they decided that probably a good thing to do would be to make a tourist attraction. That we could take this schooner and restore it and put it down in the park, and tourists would come here to see it. Who knows? Spring breakers, winter Texas. And plans were laid, but as time wore on, this dig was pretty muddy, pretty time-consuming. And as the dig went down, these folks got pretty tired of this ship. This was nothing but just hard work. You can see the bulkheads here. It's beginning to emerge. There's even a piece of the rudder left. This guy just backed it up onto the beach. These big old strong timbers on the side here are the extensions of the ribs that held it together. Now, the goodies. There was no gold. No gold at all, but there were some little rusty chains and some hardware, which the Texas Historical Commission would love to get their hands on. But as you can see, they're in the trunk of somebody's Dodge Dart. And they're on their way out. I'm not going to be here much longer. Amazing that they survived it all. Now, after a period of time of looking at the boat, and it floated up onto the beach, the big high tide took it up on the beach, it was decided that A, there's no treasure, B, we'll never get the money together or the interest really to do a museum thing out of it, and C, it damn thing's in the way. And so they burned it. Had it up, there's the rudder, had all the hardware on it, what a chance. You see the bulkheads and the way this thing was bulkheaded right down the middle, and there's a little pathway there on the right, a But you had to stoop to get down. These were not yachts. And at the end of that was your cabin, such as it was. Big old stern. There was the bow sticking way up high. The deck was removed. You can see the aft hold there. And look at the size of those deck beams. And that great big thing running fore and aft right down the middle, just to the right of the skinny guy that's walking, is the centerboard, which made these things sailable and shallow because they could raise their centerboard. And there's the last shot of the Lake Austin. It became charcoal. Now, the story ended sadly. What a shame. Luckily, there was a fellow who came along. His name was Malcolm Johnson. And he was an amateur archaeologist. And he took very careful pictures of the whole thing. He took very careful notes. He sketched the hull. He wrote up the narrative of the dig and how they went about it. And then he went home and built this beautiful little boat. Can we see that one before this? There we go. Pretty little boat, until you see it from the side. Kind of blocky, but that's the way they were sometimes. Well, this thing served 25 years, carried who knows how many tons of cargo, 50 tons at a haul, made people a lot of money. And the first owner was a poor rancher. His name was Joe. Well, this brings us to a new chapter. Many, many years ago, my wife and I came to Port Regis to be over the boat shop and began building boats. And this old man, I mean, he was old. He was 70. I am now almost 70. He doesn't seem so old, but he showed up. His name is Joe Bicknell. He was from Massachusetts, and he became my partner in the boat business. And Joe had been the director of the wind tunnel at MIT. He was published in 6 languages around the world, so his grasp on fluid dynamics was pretty good. He understood boat design very, very well. And we built rowing and sailing boats from early Texas designs. That's a pretty odd niche, to be sure. We weren't covered up with business. But for some reason, we both became enamored of the Texas Scow, this rare and elusive thing. And Joe Bicknell wanted to build a Scow schooner to represent Port A, to be a tall ship, to take people on rides, to give them historical tours. Cameron, my wife, and I decided we were more interested in the Scow sloops, and we went off to Mexico, lived with the people in there, discovered a relic culture, moved in with them, learned how to sail their boats, learned how to build their boats, took the lines off, drafted up the plans, and came back to Port A, where we taught the Texas Maritime Museum into building it. And it still sits over there today. And we sailed it, and I have to say, it was a darn fine boat. Really, really. It was just perfect for Texas. We were scudding down Aransas Bay. The wind was blowing like it always does, and the chop was steep like it always is. And we had a totally greenhorn crew on board this Scow. I mean, greenhorn. There was only 2 of us on board that had ever sailed anything. And neither one of us had sailed a Scow except for a few hours. Well, we're running. The wind is behind us. And that means this great big long boom is way over on the side of the boat. The wind pushing it along like crazy. And this thing's got a bone in its teeth. It's up. It's just trying to plane. If we could have trimmed the sails a little bit better, this thing would have popped up and run like a scalded ape. But we had a greenhorn on board, and everywhere he looked, he took the tiller with him. Well, they didn't understand sailing language. And so, as he would get over here, and the wind would get closer and closer to getting behind that boom, that's called being by the lead. We would shout out, "By the lead!" And he'd think, yeah. So, it sounded like a song to him. It sounded like a good drinking song. But finally, it happened. He jibed the boat. That means accidental jibe. The boom lifted, the wind got in front of it, and it came swinging. This is a 24-foot boom. Came swinging across the boat at full speed, picked him up, and carried him into the water. Now we got a man overboard, we got a green crew, we got a boat we don't know much about, and I'm thinking, what am I doing here? So your training kicks in or it doesn't, and luckily it did. So the first thing you do is you get a compass reader, and then you get the reciprocal, and you know that's where your guy is, or your girl, whoever's in the water, you know that's where your crew person is. So I got the compass, and I looked around to get the reciprocal, and I'm shouting orders that we're going to heave to, and then we're going to come about, and then we'll come up on him and pick him up into the wind so we can luff, and he can climb aboard. And all this is going like clockwork, and I look back, and here's this guy walking and waving. The water's up to about his knees. Shallow, shallow draft. This boat was hauling boogie in less than 3 feet of water. Now this big old centerboard, the thing was 12 feet long, would bump if you got too shallow, so that was your depth sounder. These boats are really just ideal for Texas. It's just kind of hard to imagine anything better than that. Now, we closed our boat shop and went to the lighthouse, restored it. We were going to be there 3 years, and 19 years later we came home. Having restored the lighthouse again and again and again and again and again, because Russ doesn't sleep. And there's a lot of buildings out there to take care of. But we moved back to town and had nothing to do, so we began to ruminate about, let's get something. Well, we started this project to restore a skill to Port Aransas called Farley Boatworks. And it took off. Woo, man, it took off. But suddenly it's an extremely busy deal. And I'm looking on the internet, just surfing around, finding other people who are doing the same thing we're doing. And I came across something called the Scow Schooner Project. So I zapped it, looked at it, and my gosh, there's a group up in Anahuac, and they were building a Texas Scow schooner. So I called them. I said, hey, how's it going? This guy said, who are you and what are you doing? And I explained to him. And he said, you know, I just have made your day. We're a nonprofit. We've been broke for 9 years. We've got this hull sitting inside a hangar on an airport, and we'd like to give it to you. Would you like to take it? And thus launched another adventure. One of the original people who worked on the Scow schooner is here tonight, John Berkman. Put your hand up, John. We're honored to have both of you here. The keel of the boat was laid in the year 2000, so it was about 14 years old by the time that we transferred it. And here it is when we found it. This is what we went up to find. How as we get through these shots next to these. But it actually was a very pretty hull. You can see that it has quite a lot of shape to it. However, it was a long way from home. Here's the other side of it. You see the cypress planking with the pine framing and all the ropes and cords and etc. that came with the deal. And here it is, being moved. Now, how do you move a 40-foot Scow schooner? Very carefully. Sundance Services, an oil field company, loaned us the use of a wonderful truck and 2 great guys on each end of the move, and they brought it down here. Here it is. It kind of attracted a lot of attention. Coming down the road like this. Getting on the ferry. Got a lot of questions. Big old thing. And here it is coming up. So it now is behind the Farley Boatworks, and we're getting ready to launch phase 2 of the construction, which will be to sheath the hull, put on the skeg and the 4-foot, then we can turn it over. That ought to be interesting. So, if you are going to be in town for a little while longer and you would like to get involved, please come and talk to us. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah.
Okay,
What are you going to do with it?
that's a good question. One of the members of our history team here, Dr. John Guthrie Ford, has written a wonderful historical tour of the water.